Good afternoon, everyone. It's 12 o'clock and we are about to start the webinar, and I just want to give everybody sort of a 2-minute warning. We want to get going in 2 or 3 minutes, and just a reminder that this meeting will be recorded, so those who can't participate today will be able to see it at a later date. Good afternoon again, everyone. I think we will start now. It's about 3 minutes after 12. For those of you who don't know me, which is probably the vast majority of the members on the call, my name is Jim Keach, and I am the interim president CEO of Ontario One Call. It's a role that I've been in for, I guess, about 3.5 weeks now, and it's something that I, to this point, have found very interesting and enjoyed very much. And lots happening, lots to learn, lots going on. That's a bit of what we want to talk about today. So today we are here with this webinar to talk about the new regulation that has been introduced recently by the government that is obviously going to impact us here at Ontario One Call, and probably everybody else on the call as well. So what we're looking for today is to share information about that regulation, because it is still open for comment by the government, and I believe it's till the 21st of this month that you have to provide comment, and we just want to make sure that you're informed, and if there are things that you see that you would like to provide comment on, that you can do that, and we'll provide you with some information as to how to go about doing that. So that is really what we're looking for today. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Jean, and we'll be back on later on to help out with some of the questions that I'm sure you're going to have. So over to you, Jean.
Thank you, Jim. I just want to introduce myself. It's Jean Lépine. I've just joined the organization, just celebrating a month in my role as Chief Corporate Officer. So I'll be working with Ian and the rest of the team on the execution, if you will, of an AMP regime, compliance, education, marketing, etc. And what we wanted to do is make sure that in today's webinar, we cover off some of the questions that you might have, but just provide a deeper understanding of what is being proposed, the ministry's regulations specifically, but also the opportunity for stakeholders, members, etc., to provide feedback to the government through its specific channels. We'll describe those during the presentation today, but I'm happy to be here. I look forward to working with everyone. And you've got a great guy in Ian who's going to walk you through this now and try to answer some of the questions that you might have as we go forward. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Jean, and thank you, Jim. That was a great introduction. I just want to thank everyone for being here. We have hundreds of people that are going to be joining us today from all walks of the stakeholders which use Ontario One Call. There's members, there's excavators, there are representatives from associations here, even government as well. So we want to welcome you all for attending today. We're going to go over a presentation today which outlines what the ministry is proposing for the regulations to come out, which will impact how Ontario One Call imposes AMPs. So we're going to go through that. The main goal of today is to basically broaden your understanding, right? We want to make you understand what's being proposed by the ministry so that you can do two things. Number one, provide feedback to the ministry through the regulation registry. So if you see something that you want to make comment on, this isn't the forum. The forum is on the regulation registry. It goes directly to the ministry and they want to hear your voices. And number two, we want to prepare you. Ontario One Call puts great efforts in trying to help its stakeholders be compliant with our law. And so we want to give you the opportunity to know what's going on with our law changes and regulations so that you are most prepared so you can be compliant as well. I just want to say a couple things here before we really get started. There is an opportunity to ask questions. Okay, if you look at your side panel, there is a section called questions. In that area, you're able to click on it and type in a question. Okay, these questions will be saved for 4 different areas within the presentation. So we're going to go over a variety of different subjects. We're going to give you some context, why we got here, how the regulations came about, and then we're going to get to some sections which show the amounts of the AMPs for different sector groups. One is for members, so we'll have questions there. One is for excavators, we'll have questions there. Another one's for dedicated locator, we'll have questions there. Then we'll go through when the implementation period will be proposed for the AMP regime, as well as the use of funds that the ministry is proposing Ontario One Call can use for what we gain if we impose the AMPs. And so you will have an opportunity at that point for any final questions you have. Now we have 2 fabulous moderators who are dealing with questions. 2 names you may know. We have Adam Mordaunt, and he is the Director of Member Services. His team deals with solutions, so helping members and excavators and just general users of our system come up with solutions on how to use things on a day-to-day basis. He's also a resident expert and major educator on the dedicated locator model. Dedicated locator is one of the new additions to our law that was brought out in April, and it has the possibility of really helping large, complex, or time-sensitive projects stay on track with timely delivery of locates. So we welcome him. We also have Jeff Hitchcock, who is our manager of training and education. And him and his team work tirelessly to help stakeholders use our system most effectively, understand what they are responsible for, and just getting them on track. He's also the main creator of our professional locate administrator course, which those who have been certified, which there are thousands of them at this point, are making high quality locates. They understand what the rules are and they understand how to manage their locates better. So we're very happy to have them as our moderators today. So I'm going to get into this presentation here so you can understand more about what the ministry is proposing for Ontario One Call's AMP regime. Okay, so again, I'll just go over the purpose here. Just to restate this, the purpose of this presentation today is to deepen your understanding of what the ministry is proposing. So our ministry, the ministry that oversees us, is the Ministry of Public and Business Service Delivery. You might see the acronym, which is MPSBD. Okay, and we're going to review what they're proposing in a minister regulation about what the AMP regime, administrative penalty regime through One Call. This gives you an opportunity to provide feedback. Now, feedback isn't done through here. Feedback is done through the regulation registry. You have until November 21st, so you still have a few weeks. So take as much notes as you can, get as much understanding as you can, so that if you need to provide information, go back to your executives within your company, your lawyers, and decide what kind of feedback you want to give to the ministry, as well as it gives you a chance to prepare. This is happening. So now it's time to prepare. You think about everything you can do to be compliant with Ontario One Calls law, so that you can get that in place, so that the possibility of AMPS will not happen to you. Okay, so that's the purpose. Why is there a regulation? So let's just start there. So the ministry is proposing a regulation, right, to support all the changes that have been made to our act, and our act is known as the Ontario Underground Infrastructure Notification Systems Act. And it was changed just recently in April of this year because of a bill called Bill 93. Okay, that effectively changed our act as well as another act, the Building Broadband Faster Act, but we're dealing with what the changes are with us, okay? This regulation creates the framework which we at On One Call need to administer for the administrative penalty regime. Now, the proposed date for the implementation, when does this start, would be April 1st, 2023. That's what the proposal is suggesting. And that's one of the areas that you're allowed to make commentary towards, okay? So first, I just wanna wrap this up. There was a law change. Our law changed in April of this year, April 14th. I just wanna go over some of those law changes just to make sure everyone's on the same page, just in case you don't know all the law changes or there's any confusion. We'll go over that first before the regulation, okay? So Bill 93, it was called the Getting Ontario Connected Act. It received royal assent on April 14th, and that effectively changed our law. A lot of people call our law the One Call Act, and I'll refer to it as the One Call Act because Ontario Underground Infrastructure Notification System Act is a bit of a mouthful, so One Call Act. The main reason for the changes brought about by the ministry and the stakeholders were to remove barriers for the timely delivery of locates. Late locates is a massive issue, and this law and the changes in it were to help that, okay? Another reason was to enhance the governance of Ontario One Call and the oversight by the ministry to our organization, and to improve our compliance tools. Ontario One Call needs more compliance tools, and this answered that call. Okay. So some of the major law changes, I mentioned this a little bit at the beginning. Adam's team deals with this and helps out with dedicated locator, which there are thousands of dedicated locator requests already in our system. Dedicated locator. Dedicated locator is, just to create some understanding of that, it is a single dedicated locator known as a DLSP, okay, that will continually deliver locates where and when needed for every single underground infrastructure on a project from beginning to completion. There are some projects that are mandated to be part of it and others that are voluntary. If you are interested in participating or finding out more information about dedicated locator, it's on our website. We have a dedicated locator webpage that explains it, as well as you can reach out to our dedicated locator team and they'll be happy to answer any questions and walk you through it. DL, so DL at OntarioOneCall.ca. Another major law change was putting in a validity period. Before there was no validity period in our law for locates. Now all members have to have a minimum expiry date of 60 days. So that's 60 calendar days. Every single member that provides a locate, the validity period has to be a minimum of 60 days. Another answer is to restrict the possibility of locate dumping. So sometimes excavators put in locates which they don't need immediately, or they put in too many locates at the beginning of the season. A law has been put in place, the section of the law, in order to stop that. No excavators are allowed to ask for locates to be delivered if they do not have the intention of digging within 30 calendar days. Another law change was sharing of locates is permitted. So if you are working on a project, especially as a general contractor, you have subcontractors, you are allowed to share locates. Now to do that, you have to make sure Ontario One Call knows who you're sharing it with. So do that at the beginning when you're putting the locate request. Or second of all, if you can't do that at that point, just create some documentation that explains who you're sharing that with and have it at the ready, just in case Ontario One Call or other regulators ask for that document. Another one is a requirement for Ontario One Call to publish members' locate performance data. We have already fulfilled that and we've already started. There is member locate performance data from July to September. October will be up soon. It's on our compliance reports page, which you can find on our website. Another law change was member and excavator recourse. So if a member or excavator wants to take it in their own hands and they are losing money, you have the right to receive compensation for expenses and losses from the other party, so whether it's the excavator or member, if they've contravened some sections of the Act, okay? And lastly, was the ability of Ontario One Call through an assigned assessor to be able to impose administrative penalties. But we needed a regulation in order to figure out, to have direction on how to apply these, and that's why we're here today. Okay, so really, I know we told you that this is about getting a deep understanding. Reviewed some of the law stuff. Now it's about the regulation. It's about what the framework is for Ontario One Call to impose administrative penalties. If you want your voice heard, if you hear stuff in the next couple sections, which you either agree with or don't agree with, the ministry wants to hear it. Again, this isn't the forum to express what your opinions are, because you want to get it officially stated. To get it officially stated, go to the regulation registry. I'm sure we'll provide this link for you as well. And you got to get it in before November 21st. Just so everyone knows, this video is being recorded, this webinar. This presentation deck is already available on our website. It is ontarioonecall.ca/regulation. You can find this presentation with the appropriate links there as well. Okay, now the ministry is asking for certain sections of feedback. There's certain things that they're very interested in. So if you're proposing what kind of feedback you want to give, this is how you should frame it, okay? There are certain sections of our Act which they are proposing AMPs will be able to be imposed. Now, there's other sections of the Act where they're not. So if there's other contraventions in the Act that you think should have the ability for Ontario One Call to use an AMP, you can propose that. Other areas are there's certain amounts for the proposed offenses. If you think they're too light or too heavy, this is a great opportunity for you to put that information forward. Also, should there be other considerations for the implementation? Now, I mentioned the implementation date is April 1st. If you think that's too soon, not soon enough, or other implementation considerations, that's a great idea for you to put down. And then at the very end of our presentation, we'll go over where the ministry thinks we should use the funds as Ontario One Call if and when we use the AMPs. And so if you look at those and you agree with or you don't agree with them or think we should go in different areas, that's another opportunity for you to provide feedback. And then again, and lastly, the ministry would just like any additional feedback that you feel is necessary. Okay, so let's get into the good stuff. Again, as we go through this, if you have questions, go to the questions tab. Adam and Jeff are looking at those questions and getting ready for the 4 different sections where we're going to ask questions. So I'm going to go over what has been proposed on the regulation registry by the ministry for what we do for the AMP regime. Okay, I'll go over some of the context that they've supplied. I'm actually pulling out different sections from their overall summary as well and just reviewing that, as well as the penalty amounts and the contraventions and use of funds. Okay, so we'll just start with the context. This is the context that the ministry has put together on why the AMP regime is to be brought forward. So in general, what they're stating is locating underground infrastructure is vital for the province's construction activities, and it is. They have a lot of government priorities that are currently happening. High-speed internet is really big right now. Housing is really big, and there will be more. And then what they're saying here in their context is the delivery of locates is causing a delay. So excavation projects are being delayed and there are huge cost implications. On top of that, there could be safety considerations as well, right? But the timely delivery of locates is a problem. Also, for context, they wanted to say that Ontario One Call needs more tools in its compliance framework, and strengthening Ontario One Call with enforcement tools is appropriate, and using administrative penalties would be great. Okay. Now, Ontario One Call has compliance tools. We've used compliance tools in the past, whether it's through complaints, escalations, warning letters, 24-hour notices, 48-hour notices, compliance notices, mediations, in-person calls, suggestions of changing of business practices, and a lot of other tool sets that we've used. But the one thing that we've never had is the ability to use a financial method in order to motivate compliance. And so what they're suggesting here is all these tools are still available for Ontario One Call to encourage compliance. And whatever tool set we use is to motivate those to get to compliance. We need to push people into compliance. And the administrative penalty is just one other tool. They're also saying Ontario One Call, even with all those tools, including administrative penalties, can still pursue prosecution of offenses to anything in the Act. Now, upon approval of the regulation, once it goes through, and again, the proposed date is April 1st, so it would be approved before then, okay? And then it would be implemented on April 1st. Ontario One Call during that period, after it gets approved, will develop policies and procedures for its application. And you will be seeing a lot more information, communications, maybe even webinars from us, as well as policies being posted to our website about, the implementation of this. Some are in development, but again, they cannot be published until after the regulation and need board approval, of course. But you should expect like a dispute policy, how to appeal if you receive any compliance action at all, including an AMP. See policies around the AMPs themselves, as well as policies around penalties for not paying and interest penalties. Okay. Components. So what you're going to see in the framework. So if you go to the regulation registry, there's a couple documents that you can download. One is the draft regulation, which you can read it just verbatim of what they're saying. And the other one is a summary of overall what they're suggesting. I highly recommend everyone downloads them to read them, even after this presentation, just to make sure you have a full understanding of what's going on. You're going to see within the draft regulation itself a list of all the contraventions of the Act and the penalty amounts, okay? And I'm going to go through that in just a second here, okay? One thing to note, and the regulation gives Ontario One Call the ability to lay daily AMP penalties for contraventions under the Act, okay? So what does this mean? It means that if there is a contravention that happens in the Act, and it continues to happen, whether it's multiple day or it's continually going, there is the ability to lay daily AMPs, okay? But one thing to note is the law itself provides that a penalty amount for a contravention cannot exceed $10,000. So even if there is a daily amount, that contravention cannot be more than $10,000. Okay, so let's get into one of the first areas. So once we finish this page, we're gonna start seeking some questions. So I wanted to go over first the non-compliance for members. So I'll go over the contraventions that the ministry has listed and the penalty amount that's being suggested, just so everyone understands, and then we'll start taking some questions from the audience, okay? So the first one is late locate related. Members' failure to meet timelines for standard locates. So section 6.3 stipulates that members must complete a locate within 5 business days. Okay, so within 5 business days, members must complete a locate. okay? If that's not met, the AMP amount for late locate would be $500. Okay. The next one is concerning emergency locates. So members' failure to meet timelines for emergency locates. Now, just to provide clarification of what that timeline is, in section 6.4, emergency locates, to meet the timelines, a member must be on site within 2 hours to provide a locate. So as long as they're on site within 2 hours to start providing a locate, or they provide a clearance. So all clear, our infrastructure is not there with the paperwork within 2 hours, they've met the timelines. If not, there is a possibility of an AMP of $1,500. Okay. The next one is a failure of members, so an affected member to notify about a change in locate information within 2 business days of becoming aware of a change. Okay, so what does this mean? So what this section is saying, which is section 9.1, is basically saying that if anything is changed in a locate, so a member provides a locate and it's still valid, you know, it has an expiry date of 60 days or beyond, and they realize that something is wrong with the locate sheet, something is wrong with the locate, or maybe something has changed. Maybe they've put in infrastructure in the area since they provided that locate that no longer, you know, the changes that locate paperwork and locates, excuse me, they are members required to reach out to Ontario One Call as well as the excavator within 2 business days of understanding that there has been a change. And then the expectation from Ontario One Call is that member, after signaling to ourselves as well as the excavator, would update that locate so that excavator can continue on with its duties and make sure it's complying with the law. And an excavator must dig safely, must follow all the rules. Now, if that doesn't happen, the AMP amount would be $500. And lastly, section 14.1 of our Act is all comes down to 360 feedback. So 360 feedback is what members must use in order to update Ontario One Call when they complete a locate. And all members must update Ontario One Call when they complete a locate within 3 business days. If they don't update Ontario One Call within 3 business days of completing a locate, there is an AMP amount of $500. And that'll take us through the member section. So I will open it up. I'm going to invite Jim and Jean to join me to answer some questions, and I'll allow Adam and Jeff to pose some questions to us.
Excellent. Thanks, Ian. It's Jeff Hitchcock. I've got your very first question. How will Ontario One Call decide when an administrative monetary penalty, or AMP, is applied? Will it be issued based on a complaint basis or based on non-compliance as tracked by Ontario?
That's a great question. Okay, so an AMP can be laid on a variety of different ways, right? You know, we can use data that Ontario One Call has. We can issue investigations, right? A compliance staff can go through investigations, make determinations, or can start with a complaint. If we're talking about late locates just in general, so if you visit our compliance report page and see how members are doing with their performance, right? The most egregious ones out there, maybe the 15-day plus, because that's our maximum that we measure. Ontario One Call more than likely would see compliance action towards the most egregious ones, right? We could utilize data for that. But for other offenses within the Act, where it's necessary, complaints can help generate our staff to take a look at, as well as start investigations.
Thank you.
Okay, so this question, the person asking it states that they believe that the root cause is pointing at the LSPs and their resources and not at the member themselves. So why are the penalties being imposed against the membership and not the source of the non-compliance of completing the locate?
That's a good question. I'll take that one again, Jim and Jean, if you're okay with that. So in the Act itself, there are only so many named parties. Locate service providers, other than dedicated locator, of course, locate service provider is not named in the Act itself. It's not the responsibility of the locate service provider. It's the responsibility of the member. The member owns the underground infrastructure. They are responsible for providing timely delivery of locates. So it's the member's responsibility. Even if their LSP or locate service provider cannot provide locates, that member is responsible for figuring out how to provide them. So they have to use all channels possible, every possible option that they can do to complete locates within a timely fashion, whether or not they've hired that service out to someone else or not.
I'd like to add something there, Ian, and it dovetails back to the first question as well. I think it's important for our stakeholders, members, et cetera, to understand that there is no pleasure at one call in the implementation of an AMP regime. There's no, inherent satisfaction for us to be in this position. But if our goal is, as is stated, that we are going to promote safe digging in the province of Ontario, it needs a certain amount of compliance tools to help improve that performance track. And this is where the government's at today. So I want it to be clear as best we can that this is not, there's no satisfaction coming from the team at one call to be in this position. But at the same time, there has been, even in my short period of time, many calls for ways to improve the performance of the industry as a whole. And so, governments have certain tools. These tools are being provided at this time. It's not, and it isn't, as I said, a pleasure. But we are looking forward to working with the entirety of the industry on finding solutions, which includes improving the supply, if you will, of these professionals in the field who can provide locates. So it is not one thing that's going to solve this challenge that we've got together. It's a series of things, and this is a regime that's put in place, not unlike other regimes across government, to try to assist the industry in moving towards a performance stream that is more productive and that supports the interests of the industry, but also of Ontarians.
Great. Okay. Next question is a bit of a clarification. This respondent is aware of tighter deadlines that Bill 93 brought us. Given the new 5 business day deadline, or the revised 5 business day deadline, does that deadline encompass secondary clearances? For instance, Enbridge's line valve clearance letter.
So just in general, the 5 days is absolute, right? It's for absolutely everything, right? So whenever notified, a member must provide a locate, right, or clearance.
Okay, thank you.
Another point of clarification a couple of people have been asking about is the fine that's up on the screen, or the penalty amount, apologies, is that a per day amount, and the maximum of $10,000? How does that work if there are 2 late requests? Would that mean $10,000 for the 2 late requests, or would that be individual per request?
Great question. So just to provide clearance on or clarity on it. So yes, a penalty amount could be a daily amount, could be. But I just to echo what Jean was talking about and what Jim was kind of, talking about at the very beginning, the goal of everything here is to help people get into compliance, and AMPs are just one tool set. I think you might see, or you might expect that Ontario One Call, when this first gets implemented, will have a ramp up stage, right? There will be some time, right, once things get rolled out where you may not see daily amps put out, except for maybe really egregious I guess contraventions in the act. I think that that's relatively safe to say at this point. But you are correct. So just to provide clarification, so a $500 amount, say, or a $1,500 amount, or whatever is applied here, could potentially be a daily amount, and that daily amount could keep going daily up into a maximum of 10,000. And that would just be, so if you're just talking about a locate request, that would be one locate request. But the possibility of that happening, especially at the gate, might be minimal. But again, these types of policies and procedures and how we move forward need board approval, and they will, we'll talk about more about that after the regulation is passed.
I have yet another point of clarification. What if a member provides incorrect paperwork within a compliant time frame? Will the required revisions factor into 6.3's non-compliance?
It's possible, but again, I think the main thing here, and this is where compliance staff come in quite a bit. Compliance staff within Ontario On Call or within every regulator try to figure out what the major issue is and how to resolve that as quickly as possible. So if this can be resolved in other means other than AMPs, that's always that seems to be one of the best solutions possible. It's about motivating, right, for compliance. If an AMP is appropriate, then yes, an AMP could go forward. But majority of the time, compliance staff will always look for a way for the contravener to become compliant and be compliant going forward without suffering too much loss.
Okay, thank you. So will there be a phased approach to implementing the proposed AMP fee structure?
Sure, Jim or Jean, do you want to take this one?
I'll take a first crack at it. I mean, it's the prerogative of the board to decide on how this is going to roll out exactly. But I think what staff is trying to work through, and the ministry will be involved, is what is the right sequence of events that aim at improving the performance of the industry? What is the right way to do this so that at the end of the day, the industry is moving hand in hand together towards better performance on late locates, for example? There is nothing, as I said earlier, there's nothing in it for us to become the stewards of a program that doesn't improve the overall performance of the industry. That's first of all no fun, but it also doesn't move the needle. So board must approve, because Ontario On Call has a board, so that will occur. But I imagine that there will be conversations with the ministry to ensure that there is full alignment on the execution of this kind of regime. Jim?
Yeah, so I don't want to repeat an awful lot of what Jean said, but I think the simple answer to the question is yes, there will be a phased approach. And just to reiterate what Jean said, we'll need our board approval. We will also be talking with the ministry in this regard. And, that's something that we are working on continuously at the moment. And as the regulations get approved, taking into account any comments that we made here, we need to finalize that and then communicate that out to members as well. But yes, there will definitely be a phased approach. At some point in time, we are going to be administering AMPs. There's no question about that. But it's not our intention to day one out of the gate to be going out and charging everybody that you possibly could with AMPs. It will be phased in, and the best way that works for everybody involved is our intention.
And just to echo that too, right? Compliance can't be everywhere at all times. right? It's not possible to be everywhere at all times, but you know, compliance will put its best efforts towards the ones that have the most non-compliance first, right? Or the most riskiest or unsafe behaviors.
Thank you for that, gentlemen. Also kind of in line with this, will AMPs be pursued if there are no complaints in a given category?
Yeah, I kind of covered this in a little bit, but just to provide clarity, it doesn't, AMPs can be administered even if there isn't a complaint attached to it. Ontario One Call is a data company. We have a lot of data, right? Members need to report into Ontario One Call. Excavators need to request to locate into Ontario One Call. Then every single time there's an update to a locate, right, there is data points. So just based on data alone, Ontario One Call could motivate any type of compliance action, which it has done in the past as well. So it's not necessary for a complaint to go forward for an AMP to be administered.
Okay, thank you very much for that one. So we have someone here that says that many LSPs are backdating their locates. So they would receive it on November 9th, but it would be dated on November 3rd. Shouldn't a locate be valid from the date that it was sent via email?
Yes, that is correct. So if that is an issue that's happening out there, so just to clarify, a locate is only complete once 2 elements are completed. So if it's not a clearance, if it's an actual physical locate, the marks have to be put in the ground and the excavator has to have the paperwork. So the paperwork is the last stage of it. So locate is not complete until both of those are done. So the validity period would start once the full locate package is delivered. And if there is a problem with that, hopefully if there's someone who's doing that unknowingly, they've just learned that. And if not, if an excavator needs help, they can reach out to our compliance department as well. There's an online complaint form, which is the easiest methodology to reach our compliance department.
All right. And thanks, Ian. I got one last question for this chapter of the presentation. Will One Call have a publicly available enforcement policy and procedure that it will follow?
There is going to be a few documents that are going to be published soon. So after the regulations, there's a couple documents. We mentioned policies, right? So there'll be a few policies. There's also in development a rules document, right? A rules document is a plain, so there's a lot of documents out there, right? So there's bylaws, laws, and the regulation. There's going to be one document that puts everything in. It's called the rules document that will be more in plain English and not legalese, right? That will make it easy for every single stakeholder to understand what their responsibilities are and the potential outcomes. On top of that, you're going to start seeing improvements to Ontario One Call's websites and forms that we have that explain the process. So if you're talking about like how the enforcement process will happen, how the appeals process will happen, we'll have a lot more documentation and instructions on our website and through our documents in the very near future.
Thank you. Adam actually has one additional question for this section. I apologize.
Great.
Hey, Adam, before you do that, I just want to add on to what Ian just said. I think where we would benefit in One Call is for some clarity from the field, let's call it the field in this case, on what are those things that you need clarity on that's going to assist you in improving performance overall. If there are elements of data, if there are elements of practice or process or policy that you feel, if this thing was clarified, I know I could do better, or I know I could convince my organization to do better, or however you want to describe it, that would be super important for us to receive at your earliest convenience. Because at the end of the day, we're working together on this. We all, the hat we're wearing is, you know, safe excavation in the province of Ontario, done in a timely fashion to support the interests of the economy and of the citizenship. So if we wear that hat as we embark on this journey together, then we know why we're doing it. So we encourage you to provide that kind of feedback to us on, as I said, policy, procedures, any other element that you receive from us or that you see from us online. We're all ears. We are wide open to receiving it, and we want to work in partnership with everyone to try to get to that right place. But we do need your help, so thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Appreciate that. I would suggest at this point that you know, we do have some teams that are working on collecting feedback as well. If anyone does have that kind of feedback, you can send it to training@ontarioonecall.ca. Appreciate that. All right, let's move on to excavators. So we took some time to explain what's been proposed by the ministry in the AMP regime for members. Now we'll switch hats and go to excavators. So an excavator is any one entity or person that plans to dig or break ground, right? So the very first one is digging without locates. This is section 10.1. So obviously, when you're looking at these amounts, we got some clarity from the ministry as well, just to provide context. You see a $10,000 amount for digging without locate. The ministry looked through and categorized what is the most riskiest or the most dangerous type of contravention, and that's how they picked the amounts so far. Of course, if you have any information that you want to provide or feedback on this, you can. So again, digging without locates would be $10,000 penalty amount. The next section is an $8,000 penalty amount. If, for example, you already have your locates, but they're expired and you no longer have valid locates and you continue digging. So the first one is not receiving all locates. The second one is now you've let something expire and you continue. That one would be a $8,000 penalty amount. The next one, section 11, is about sharing of locates. I know we talked about it earlier. So excavators can now share locates openly with people that they are subcontracting, say, or sharing areas with, as long as you fulfill the locate still fulfills your dig parameters. Of course, you still have to take responsibility for that. If you fail to notify Ontario One Call or produce the documentation we're asking for of who you are sharing your locates with, there's a potential penalty amount of $200. And lastly, section 12 of our Act, if an excavator doesn't have the intention of digging within 30 business days and they are saying they require a locate and they do not need it, there's a potential $500 penalty amount. So I will stop there again, Jeff and Adam, and see if there's any questions about this section.
I have one for you about the sharing of locates. And the commenter says that throughout the period of the project, there may be new people that they would look to share the locates with. It has been suggested that they might keep a live register on site with the names of those that they're sharing the locates with. Is that acceptable to Ontario One Call?
100%. We think that's a great idea. Often some excavators right now are including in the locate package, a cover sheet, and on that cover sheet there is basically an area where you can keep the contact information. This is a great utilization because a lot of times you're bringing in different parties which need those locates, and it's very quick. So as long as you keep that documentation and it's readily available for whenever Ontario One Call or another regulator, other regulators could be Ministry of Labor, TSSA, or ESA as well. If they ask for these documents, they're readily available so that everyone is covered. That would suffice.
Thank you, Ian. What should a member do if an excavator doesn't intend to dig within 30 calendar days?
Great question. Again, this is one of the ones where using a complaint form, right, and filing a complaint would work really well. So as I said before, compliance can't be everywhere at all times. So a complaint coming into Ontario One Call helps promote focus on what area should be looked at. So this would be a great one. So if it is known you have information, you know, they don't have their permits, there's no way they're going to get it done, right? They're not even have crews in that area, and you have some information to help with the case, filing a complaint, and we have a complaints form online which allows you to tell us exactly what we should be looking at and provide any evidence or background material you have. That's how we would look into that.
So continuing on with the 30 days dig time frame, someone asked, how would we determine if the intention was to dig within the 30 days? And secondly, if the intention was to dig within 30 days, but the project gets postponed, will an AMP still be levied?
I mean, that's up to the assessor to take a look at it, the investigator who's investigating it. But just in general, if the original intention was when it went in that they're going to dig within 30 days and then it gets postponed, that is an acceptable excuse of why the dig did not happen in 30 calendar days. But if they do not have the resource, there's no intention, how do we discover what that is? There could be various ways of discovering why an excavator might not have the intention of digging in within 30 days. It'd be hard to lay that out now, but just in general, excavators should not do this. And obviously compliance staff, if they find out that they are doing this, it could lead to an AMP amount.
Excellent, thank you. Ian, I've got a sort of a flip side to this sort of 30-day question. What if a member or series of members are taking more than 30 days to respond to a locate? How do we envision this rolling out for Section 12 against an excavator?
Oh, sorry, I missed the beginning of that. You're saying that if a member does not provide locates within the first 30 days?
Yeah, what happens when the locates are taking more than 30 days to come?
Yeah, I mean, are they, I guess what's behind that question? Are they saying that they need to put it in early because they know it's taking longer? I'll put that question off to the side. If a member is late in providing locates, that's what the first section would be. Ontario One Call will take compliance action towards a member that is not providing locates within their, the legislated time frame, first and foremost, which could be AMP related. If it's taking excessive long time, again, we always say please file a complaint so that we can help you get that locate, which is the most important thing for you in dig. But taking that second part, if it's going to take longer than 30 days for us to get locates, then we need to put it in early. Is that acceptable? The answer is no. The law is clear, and I just want to make sure I missed one point earlier on, so I want to just clarify that now. The Act itself and the regulations are an absolute liability regime, which means that a contravener cannot come up with any excuse why it's okay to break the law. There could be no, even if they made all reasonable attempts, that is not an excuse in the law, okay, or in this regime at all. So even if they felt just by market force they had to put it in 2 months in advance just to get it so they could get to their work time frame, that is unacceptable in the law. They are required to stay within that 30 days.
I just want to add, Ian, because there may be some stakeholders who are like, wow, these guys are pretty serious about this stuff. The letter of the law needs to be black and white, otherwise it's not enforceable. So that's why you get some very specific timelines, some very specific words, and how many days, etc. Otherwise, it's not enforceable, and it just becomes a bit of a farce, really, to be frank. So, you know, when Ian describes kind of the lines in the sand, so to speak, well, those are the lines that we've been given by statutes and other tools. The goal remains. The goal will always be, how do we work together with industry partners to improve the performance of safe excavation in the province of Ontario? Like, at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do. That's why we've got a contact center. That's why we have a member services team. That's unfortunately why we also have a compliance team. It's like all these things kind of work together to try to get to a better place in terms of performance. That's what the government wants. And that's, you know, why One Call has been asked to take this on. So if there's some, at the end of the day, if there's some general understanding in people's guts around this, that it's like, okay, we get why you're doing this. Here are some suggestions on how we can try to improve performance over time, then great. Then we're moving forward together. Where it doesn't work is when people just look away and say, I don't care, you know, too bad, you know, we'll deal with it. And I know that that's not the way people aren't built that way. People don't want to be that way. So we're trying to find a way to engage with our partners, with stakeholders, with government, etc., that gets us on this train, this momentum train of like, we're going to get to a better performance across the board in terms of what we manage. So I just don't want that to be lost ever in this conversation. And so I apologize for jumping back in, but that's important to us.
No, and I think that's well stated. And again, yes, you know, if I seem like I'm being hard on some of these, it's because the line has been drawn in the sand. But you know, it's all about driving compliance. Some behaviors lead to other bad behaviors, if that makes sense. There are late locates, right, which causes people to dump tickets into the system. People dump tickets into the system, which causes late locates. This has been put in the legislation as well as the regulations to get rid of both of those, right? So that there is a reliable system that people can depend on when it comes to the timely delivery of locates in order to be safe, right, while digging.
Wonderful, thank you very much for that. So we have a question in relation to subsection 10.1 that states, if an excavator is digging with private locates and not through Ontario One Call, does the $10,000 fine still apply?
Great question. We deal with the public right-of-way or the vicinity of the public right-of-way and our registered members, right? So digging without locates deals specifically within our statute with our notified members. So private locators are not part of the notified member group, right? So, but it's still the responsibility of the private homeowner, right? Or sorry, the private company or the person who's digging for that private area to make sure that all locates are there so they can dig safely. And that has spillovers to other legislation and other regulators in the field. So mainly it is public locates. That's where our jurisdiction is.
Thank you, Ian. Is there a contravention and associated AMP proposed for requesting an emergency locate that is not an emergency locate?
Well, the thing is that requesting locates. Good question. I thought I saw something here. I'll have to think about that one for a second. Can we go to the next question, Jeff? I'll see how that links in.
Sure, I can take the next question, and it's the last question of this section, and it's just asking, does this apply to professional excavators? Do these AMPs apply to professional excavators only, or are they applicable to homeowners?
Hi, I'll jump back in on that one. Are homeowners part of this compliance regime? As stated before, an excavator in the law itself is anyone who disturbs the ground, right, or is preparing to dig. So that encompasses anyone. That being said, just want to state very clearly that compliance has multiple tools that it can use in any circumstance. AMPs are just one of the toolkits that we can use. And for emergency locates, I might have to get back to whoever asked that question on this. The emergency portion of this, or doing emergency abuse, there are other methods that we can use through compliance. I'm not sure if we would signal this in with the AMP regime as of currently. I would suggest that if someone wants to put this into their commentary, it would be great to put in their commentary to the ministry and the regulation registry.
Thank you, and that's all the questions for this section.
Fantastic, appreciate it. Thank you, Jeff and Adam. You guys are doing great, by the way. Let's move over to the next section. So the last section of this is AMPs related to dedicated locator. Just to be quite frank out there, there are no AMPs for the dedicated locator, the person who is the dedicated locator. These are all AMPs around the dedicated locator model. So we'll start, if you are aware of our Act, if you do read our Act as much as I do, Section 7 goes into huge detail about a dedicated locator. Again, if you want more information, Adam's team is great. dl@ontarioonecall.ca, great way to find out more information. Okay, so we'll start Section 7.5. Talks about the failure of a project owner to include information the corporation may require in the notices, okay? Or after the notice is given until the end. So if there is information that is required and it's not given within this section, there is a possibility of a $500 AMP. Now, dedicated locator is one of those models where it has a huge potential of getting major projects out of the public pool and helping that project stay on time throughout the entirety of its project. So I know before we talked about the possibility of daily AMPs and the possibility of it. Some of these could potentially maybe have the possibility of daily AMPs, but I'm not going to say whether or not we would ever go there. But to get someone on board so this can keep moving forward would be of high priority. Clause 7.7 is the next one. It's a failure of affected members and project owner to agree in writing on a locator, a dedicated locator, a DLSP, who will be responsible for all the locates, and to provide the dedicated locator with mapping. So there is time frames within the Act itself that all this has to take place, and that's 10 business days. If affected members or the project owner cannot agree, there could be an AMP of about $500 there as well. Sorry, not about, sorry, it's an absolute amount, $500. And lastly, we covered this in another section. It's 9.1, it's a member section, but it's also included in here. And that's failure of a member to notify of any change of information. So again, if anything has changed in the location where the dedicated locator is going to be that would affect what they're working on with their mapping and their locates, a member must get in touch with that dedicated locator, the project owner, and Ontario One Call and say, hey, okay, something's changed. They have to do that within 2 business days, or there's a potential of a $500 AMP there as well. And we'll open that up for more questions.
Okay, so the first question that I see here is regarding the mapping and those members that either have a lack of mapping or are unaware of where some of their infrastructure is. Does that mean that they don't have to provide it as per 7.7a or B?
The main one of the main messages right now from the dedicated locator staff, and Adam, please correct me if I'm wrong, is make sure you get your maps updated. You are required under the Act to have updated, effective, reliable mapping. If you do not, you need to do that now. And if you don't have it, then there could be a series of compliance tools that could potentially be used towards you, including an AMP.
right, thanks, Ian. How would a dedicated locator service provider work in new areas under construction or new subdivisions?
A great question. Yeah, no, a dedicated locator can be used in any circumstance, right? So again, I'd reach out for if there's a builder that's doing a new subdivision, reach out the dedicated locator team to figure out that process. But once a dedicated locator is in that area and been assigned to that area, they'll grab all associated maps and anything that's going on in that area, and they will be able to take care of that project area.
Thank you.
So another question about mapping is that if a member gives the dedicated locator access to a live database which is automatically updated in terms of mapping, does this exempt them from the member needing to notify the DL of changes of the buried infrastructure?
That's a great question. The DL has, I mean, if that's part of the notification, the DL has information to that. I think it's always worthwhile to stay compliant with this act, just to send out a quick note saying that things have been updated, just to say you're staying compliant, and then just reach out to Ontario One Call to make sure that we're in the know as well, just in case anything does come back.
Thanks, Ian. Are members allowed to place fees for their mapping information to be handed over?
Fees associated with mapping, well, there is a requirement within the Act itself, right? I would say at this point, you know, there's nothing in here that I can talk about legislation-wise or regulation-wise. I think this is a better question for the DL team that deals with this. So if this is a question, this wouldn't be a commentary that you put into the regulation. I would reach out directly to the dedicated locator team, dl@ontarioonecall.ca, and they can help you navigate that.
Yes, thank you. And the team is there for many questions and setting up calls for anyone that need clarification points like that. Thank you for putting that one out there. So there's just a point of clarification about the member again providing the mapping to the DL. Is the time frame of that within the 90 days of the 90-day notice or the 10 business days under the second clause?
Yeah, it's the second clause about the mapping. It's getting it within the 10 business days. Now, that being said, if mapping does update before the actual delivery, right, you know, the member would be responsible for updating that mapping and giving it to the dedicated locator. Fantastic. If that's all the questions for that section, I think we're doing well right now for time. So I think we're still good right now. There's a couple of things I need to go through. So now we've gone through the different variations of what's been proposed in the regulation for the contraventions and the AMP amounts. If there's something in here that has not been outlined, like you go through our acts, you know, I have mine right here, right? If you go through it and you say, hey, this is a section where an AMP should be utilized, or if you see something in here and you say an AMP shouldn't be utilized, this is a great opportunity for you to provide feedback to the ministry through the regulation registry. The next section here is use of funds. So use of funds is another area that the government is seeking feedback on. So there are a few different areas. So when collecting funds from AMPs, the ministry is suggesting that we use it in these ways. One, promote education on compliance. So industry, compliance, education to help motivate and get people to understand the responsibilities and how to be compliant. Number two is to raise public awareness for safe digging, as well as create more awareness campaigns and initiatives and campaigns to make people aware of the need to dig safe and to request locates. Number three is to promote and undertake activities that support timely delivery of locate responses. So the three suggested areas, or the three areas that are in the regulation, are promoting the use of dedicated locator. 2, system enhancements, okay, which would include IT and other enhancements through Ontario One Call. And 3, encourage more people to become locators, utility locators. Now, I just want to restate this. So that's the use of funds. The proposed implementation date. So what the government is proposing right now is that the AMP regime would start as of April 1st, 2023. Okay. I'll just go over the feedback, what they're asking for. So we covered a lot of material here, and I know we walked you through the law, some of the law changes, we walked you through the contraventions and the penalty amounts, the use of funds. So they're asking for feedback on basically the subjects that we covered here. Okay, so first and foremost, is there any other contraventions in our act that are not part of this that you want part of this? Number two, are the penalty amounts right? Are they too much, too little? Are they appropriate? Should there be implementation considerations? Another question is the use of funds. Are there other uses of funds, or should we not do some of the uses of funds that is proposed in the regulation? And then any additional comments. And just want to restate this again, that you have until November 1st to formulate your response to the ministry, and you can formulate that form, right? Put it together, get it on nice letterhead, make sure that your company is happy with what your feedback is. Go to the regulation registry and put in your commentary there. And that would be great. Now I will open the floor. So do you have any, so just putting it out there one more time for all stakeholders, everyone who's listening, do you have any questions for Jim, Jean, or myself about the regulations?
So I do have one question that's been asked a couple of times, and it's in relation to emergency requests. Just asking for a clarification on what Ontario One Call deems is the definition of an emergency request, as there seems to be a bit of a misunderstanding out there.
That sounds great. Yeah, I mean, it's in the law itself, and I mean, if there needs to be more clarification, we can get it out there. But just in general, an emergency request is a loss of a utility service, which with the loss of that service could have an imminent threat to people or the environment. That's you know that's the basic definition of that. But if this person needs more information on that, they can reach out to training at ontarioonecall.ca, and we'll be more than happy to walk them through. Anyone who has any questions about emergency locates can just go to training at ontarioonecall.ca. Be more than happy to walk you through and answer more questions.
So I have another question here. It relates to the locates that expire as a result of late remarks. Is an excavator expected to stop work at that point, or does calling in for remarks keep that locate live?
Yes, no. Every single time there's a relocate is a brand new locate request. Just think about it that way, okay? So you have to wait till all members notified provide a response. It doesn't, so just by putting in a relocate request does not extend the expiry date. Only a response from the member could extend it. So you have to wait. No matter what, you have to wait till all members provide a provide a response.
Okay, so I'll take the next question. Does Ontario One Call have any suggested training for members looking to train internal staff to process locate requests?
Great question. I'm surprised Jeff didn't answer that question or ask that question. So Jeff, who is on this, he co-created a fabulous program called the Professional Locate Administrator course. We're getting close to over 2,000 people who have registered and completed the course itself. It is a certification course. This training course is meant to make people experts in managing their locates, understanding their roles, their responsibilities, and creating the best possible locates. It also teaches them how not to abuse the system, like, make sure they don't abuse the system or use it for unintended purposes, which could get them in trouble with the law. So this course is called PLAC, so P-L-A-C. It's available on our website. Just look for, when you go on, look for PLAC or Professional Locate Administrator course, or just type it into Google and you will find it there. And if you need any help with that course, need more information on that course, if there's not enough information on the website, again, training at OntarioOneCall.ca. Our team at training is more than happy to help answer any of those questions.
Hey, Ian, I think I fixed my mute problem. If a site meeting is required for issuing the locate by the requester, but the requester is not available or returning calls, we are still within the 5 business day time frame. How should that be reflected on the 360 feedback for the member to avoid getting a penalty?
So there's nothing that stops the clock unless you provide a locate. So if there is a requirement so depending on what side it comes from, you can put a non-complete status in. That doesn't stop the time clock, right? You are required to do everything you possibly can to get that done. And again, it's an absolute regime, so there's no excuses that are plausible. But if there is a problem at all, you could reach out to compliance or to our solutions, and try to get people from our side to help you on that. Maybe something happened. I'd say it's a reach out to one of the areas within the company that might be able to help you, but make sure you do that before the timeline expires. Like you are meant to do this before the 5 business days.
Thanks, Ian. I've got a philosophical question for you next. What do you see as the scope of OneCall's role in encouraging more people to become locators?
Great question. I don't know if Jim or Jean, if you wanted to try that one.
Maybe I'll start on this one. Jean can join in. So maybe the short answer to that is we're not sure, but it's something that we are looking into and working on and talking with a number of different stakeholders, including government and the ministry, some key owners, and even had a conversation with some locate providers. And I think from our perspective, there's obviously a problem out here, and that's what we're here trying to address, and we're trying to address it collectively. And one of the key things is getting enough people, and I'm going to refer to it as a trade, and I know that's not really true, but I guess with my background, a lot of people that we work with in the field are tradespeople. And I think, encouraging people to want to get into this, getting them into the field, keeping them there, proper trainings, proper certifications. I think all that needs to be looked at, and it's something that internally we are discussing. And as I said, discussions with government, that some of them happened this week, and with a number of other stakeholder providers, because if we can't get the people to do the work, none of us are going to be successful. So it is very key. As not directly answering the question, but I just want people to know it's something that we are aware of, and we think it needs to be worked on, and we will do our part. John, I don't know if you want to add to that, because I know you've been part of a number of discussions as well.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that this is very much at the top of the list of priorities for the government as well. Right, so they want to do further research and better understand what role they can play in trying to assist the industry in developing this capacity, because obviously it's a big challenge. And also what is the certification process like for a professional locator, and we are aware that there are certain organizations providing training today, and so how do we get our arms around all of the players in the space, so to speak, and work together to try to get this on a track moving forward. So it's not philosophical, albeit that's the way the question was posed. It's very very much top of the list in terms of a priority for the ministry, and also because it is one call has to kind of bend its ear there. But it's a big opportunity. It really is a big opportunity, and so we should figure it out together.
Thanks, Jim and John. That's no, those are excellent answers. This one, next question, is I think topical mainly because winter is coming. Are locates considered expired under the new act after recent snowfall, i.e., the marks have been buried under fresh snow?
A good question. The answer is, as long as it's provided a locate and the excavator can dig safe, is always the main attribute. If a excavator cannot see the marks, there are multiple steps they could take. Some members allow excavators through paperwork to refresh marks if needed. And then many members will provide remarks as well if they get reached out to. That's usually the first step, is to reach out to the member through the contact information that is provided and reach out to get remarks. If you cannot dig safely, then do not dig safely.
Okay, great. So I have one here with regards to the new 60-day validity period on all utilities. Is the excavator still required to relocate every 30 days, or is that now that relocate period as and when required as per the 60-day validity?
Good. Yeah, I think they got their own question. They answered their own question. Yes, exactly. You are. It's no longer every 30. Wait till locates are about to expire. So when the first one is about to expire, 5 days before, that's the best time, or 5 business days before, or 5 days before, that is the best time to put in a relocate into the system. You never want to put relocates in too early, because you don't want to get clearances from members or paperwork from members saying if there's still a validity period. You want to get closest to that date where it's going to expire. But yes, so wait your 55 days and then put it in as a relocate.
Thanks, Ian. This may have been addressed partially, but this attendee's got, I think, a fairly good question. What about the prior requirement for members to notify excavators of a delay of a locate is going to take longer than 5 business days? Is the
Yes.
member who provides the warning in writing, are they exempt from a penalty?
No, but good question. Yes, there was a section of the Act that was put in place which states that if a member or their designate, which would be their LSP, potentially, is aware that they're going to be late, then they should notify Ontario One Call. That's what the Act says, that they're going to be late. We recommend through our best practices. Just so you know, a lot of these questions, we have one-pagers, best practices on how to fulfill your obligation on the law. Go to our resource page, click members. You can see a whole bunch of documents in there to help you be compliant with the law, or click excavator best practices. A lot of great resources there to help you be compliant. So a lot of those answers are in there. So the answer is, if you tell the excavator you can't get there on time, no, that does not absolve you of your requirements in the Act. As I said before, the law is very clear in an absolute regime. If you have to get it done within the legislative timeframe, which is 5 business days for a standard locate. If you do not, there is no excuses that are acceptable in the eyes of the law. So it doesn't matter if you've warned them, you're still required to get there.
Wonderful, thank you, Ian. And then one final question for this this period: will fines for late locates be laid or suspended when an infrastructure owner is in a force majeure position with their staff or the staff of the LSP because they are on strike?
I'll cover this one again. I'm not sure if Jim and John wants to jump in after this, but I'll just state again, the law and the regulations have stipulated that the requirements with the Act are an absolute regime, liability regime, which means that no excuses. It doesn't matter if people are in strike. It doesn't matter if there's bad weather. It doesn't matter if you are on site trying to complete it at the time. If you do not meet the requirements in the law, then you are contravening the Act. So there are no excuses necessary. So if a member, if you think about this, if a member should always have a backup plan or a route to be able to complete a locate, even if their primary method of completing a locate can't do it. So if they hire a third party and they can't do it, a member should always have a backup plan to be able to stay within the requirements in the law. Creating a backup plan, which trying to help members who are listening right now be compliant, always have a backup plan. Always plan for being able to hit all the requirements at peak time, which is usually April, May, right, and beyond at 100% compliance. That's what you should be striving for. So we're getting near to the end of time here. Is there one more question? Is there any other questions out there? Or if there isn't, I would pass it over to Jim. It's been a great session so far.
So I'm assuming no more questions. First off, I want to thank Ian. I think good job. I know I've learned a lot from this, and I appreciate that. Just to say, I hope everyone on the call took away something from this, maybe even as much as I did. So good job. And I'm just going to make a couple comments quickly here, because I think we're within 3 minutes of when we said we would be done, and I don't want to go over it. I think from my perspective, one of the things that we are working on, and this came up quite some time ago as a question, but is an implementation plan. So I think everybody's aware of what we were here for today, the opportunity to make comments. I'm not going to go back through that, but once comments are made and the regulation is in place, it comes to us to come up with an implementation plan and a rollout plan. And one of the things that I want to make sure is that we communicate, quite freely and quite often to everyone, and we're seen as transparent. So you are going to be hearing more from us as far as what the implementation plan is going forward. And my final comment, just thank you to everyone for attending this. I know taking an hour and a half out of your day is a big commitment. I realize this. I think this is important. And I think the only way we're going to be successful in dealing with this issue, as I said before, there is an issue out there, is that we all work together. So one call, with everyone from government, owners and excavators, focusing on the issue at hand. And I think once we do, we will all be better off. And my final word is, what we're trying to do here today is facilitate all kinds of construction. There's the broadband, there's the new housing, just general construction, but the most important thing is doing this safely. And let's not forget that. And thank you.
Thank you, everyone.